They killed Big Bertha, that 8PB base got here to my dock each morning for 3 years. I named her, fed her, watched her develop. Now she's floating stomach up with 200 other fish due to the fact my HOA president thinks she owns my lake. The chemical stench burned my nostrils at dawn. Sharp copper sulfate mixed with rotting scales. Vivian Blackwater had dumped $3,500 of industrial algae aspect into my crystal clear R water in a single day, turning it the coloration of antifreeze. I stood there holding Bertha's slimy, dead frame, shaking with pure rage. Found out some things sincerely beautiful. Yvonne's fancy subdivision gets their ingesting water from the same underground spring that feeds my lake. Every drop, each house, 847 houses. She didn't simply poison my fish. She poisoned her whole neighborhood. And he or she has no clue what's approximately to hit her. Ever had neighbors who thought they could spoil your own home just because they did not like what you had been doing? Inform me in which you're watching from. And if you were given an HOA nightmare tale, drop it below due to the fact this one's about to get wild. My name's Marcus Red. And at 52, I by no means idea I'd be at war with a lady who probably spends greater on her manicures than I make in a week. However, it's suburbia for you. I am a retired electrician, became sun panel installer, right here in Peneriage, North Carolina. The kind of guy who fixes things together with his palms and believes human beings must thoughts their own damn enterprise. My 12-acre property with its spring-fed lake has been in my circle of relatives considering that 1952, again whilst this whole vicinity became tobacco fields and common feel. Each morning I stroll that gravel course my grandfather laid boots crunching on stones worn smooth by using decades of fishermen. The dock plank sense heat and weathered below my fingers, nevertheless sticky with morning dew. And that candy honeysuckle scent mixes with the smooth mineral scent of spring water. Blue heron nest within the cypress bushes. Base soar at dawn. And for 70 years, this area has been natural peace. Then the builders confirmed up. 15 years in the past, they offered the entirety around me and constructed Willow Creek Estates, 847 McMansions beginning at $600,000 every. They provided me hundreds of thousands to sell wanted my lake for their United States of America membership. I instructed them they may take their cash and construct a clubhouse in hell. Maximum of the brand new associates had been satisfactory. Regular individuals who waved when they jogged past, perhaps requested approximately the fishing, however, then Vivian Blackwater moved in. Photo this. 47 years antique drives a white Lexus that is specific greater often than most people bathe and carries a leather portfolio to community barbecues. She talks like a legal professional, even if ordering coffee, or was around terms like belongings value optimization and aesthetic compliance requirements. The type of character who in all likelihood schedules her bathroom breaks. Vivian appointed herself HOA president within 6 months and at once released her enhancement campaigns. That's fancy speak for making all and sundry depressing until they bow to her suburban dictatorship. Her starting shot came 3 months after she moved in. Certified male, legit letterhead, the entire manufacturing. My ugly fishing sports were apparently traumatic, her peaceful enjoyment of the community. $800,000 she paid for that lakefront view, and watching me sees dinner turned into by some means ruining her investment. The legal threats escalated speedy. She claimed my dock violated aesthetic covenants that had been meant to apply to all vicinity homes. The lady honestly had the nerve to demand I tear down a shape. It's been right here considering that earlier than she was born. I called my friend Tom Martinez, real estate attorney, who saved my ass greater than once. He almost choked on his coffee giggling. Marcus, assets that predate HOA established order cannot be issued to retroactive covenants. She's threatening you with legal guidelines that do not exist. Expertise nugget. If your own home existed before and HOA changed into shaped, their policies usually cannot be applied for your land retroactively. Your deed date is your legal guard. When intimidation failed, Vivian filed a fake criticism with the county approximately my unlawful dock shape. That inspector drove out right here, looked at my 1987 allows, and apologized for losing his time. You may practically see him rolling his eyes. It truly is while she discovered her true nature. Every morning, I'd head down to fish 6 a.m. while the base are feeding, and all of a sudden Vivian needed emergency landscaping. Leaf blowers, chainsaws, commercial mowers, all screaming at most volume right along her property line. The diesel fumes would glide throughout my lake, blending with honeysuckle and turning my non-violent morning into something that smelled like a toll road creation region. Her group got more extra time in 2 months than the general public sea-aller. All despite one guy seeking to fish in his own outside. However, I kept fishing. A few concepts are well worth defending, even in opposition to suburban tyrants with too much cash and too little feel. I had no concept that Vivian became just getting warmed up, and that I virtually failed to recognize she changed into crazy sufficient to devote environmental terrorism to get her way. You understand what is worse than a Karen with a law degree? A Karen with a law degree who thinks asset surveys are weapons of mass destruction. 2 weeks after the county inspector laughed at her unlawful dock grievance, Vivian employed the most costly surveyor in 3 counties to affirm our assets' obstacles. No longer due to the fact there was any question. My grandfather marked those strains with concrete posts. That'll possibly live longer than civilization itself. This was natural harassment with an expert invoice. The surveyor showed up Tuesday morning with system really worth more than my truck. The lighting fixtures, GPS units, laser tiers that possibly price more in keeping with hour than most people make in a day. I watched from my kitchen window, sipping espresso and taking part in the show as they spent 6 hours measuring the exact same boundary. Even their harassment had to be perfectly manicured. 3 days later, Vivian's legal professional sent me a registered letter claiming my dock extended precisely 6 in onto community water rights. 6 complete inches on a lake. It has been in my circle of relatives, given that earlier than she become born. However, right, here's in which Vivian sincerely confirmed her real colorings. She filed in real lawsuit in county court docket for belongings encroachment. Professional letterhead, court stamps, submitting fees that probable cost extra than the majority's car bills. All over 6 in of dock space. When this lady commits to ruining a person's existence, she does not play around. Even as her felony papers crawled via the system, she launched a Facebook campaign that would make a political operative jealous. Posted inside the Willow Creek Estates group approximately her hard neighbor who became refusing to recognize network standards. The comment segment become a virtual lynch mob quicker than you can say assets values. But 2 can play the study's recreation. I spent my weekend inside the county courthouse basement respiration dirt that become probable older than Vivian's complete profession, digging via deed information and assets transfers. Every so often the exceptional revenge is simply knowing more than your enemy. And holy hell did I hit the jackpot. My grandfather didn't simply personal the land. He owned extraordinary water rights to the entire lake machine. Each drop, each fish, each rattling molecule of H2O, the original 1952 deed, mainly blanketed all water rights, surface and surface, which include natural springs and tributaries there, too. However, here's the lovely element that made me snort so difficult I nearly fell off my chair. The lake is spring-fed from an underground aquifer that extends without delay under Vivian's precious subdivision. Legally speaking, each time her associates flush their toilets, they may be the usage of my water. Expertise nugget. Water rights frequently switch one at a time from land possession and are recorded in belongings deeds. Those rights can be really worth extra than the land itself. I referred to as Tom Martinez with my discovery. After he stopped cackling like a madman, he said, "Marcus, you do not simply have a protection. You have got a nuclear weapon disguised as an assets deed." So we filed a countersuit for harassment, slander, and abusive felony procedure. However, the timing, that turned into pure poetry. Vine changed into website hosting one of her fancy outside dinner events. 40-plus HOA citizens status round with wine glasses complaining about their property taxes, even as consuming food that price greater in step with chew than the general public spend on lunch. The evening air carried the scent of high-priced catered salmon and pretentious communication. Champagne glasses stuck the golden hour mild, all of us dressed like they were auditioning for a real property business. Proper within the center of Vivian's speech about maintaining network standards and assets values, our sheriff's deputy walked through her back gate like he owned the location. Ma'am, I need to serve you with some prison files. 40 conversations stopped mid-sentence. The most effective sound turned into ice clinking nervously in glasses as Vivian's perfectly manicured hands trembled reading the papers. Her foundation could not conceal how pale she went when she found out what she became holding. "That is harassment," she shrieked loud enough to rattle home windows. "That redneck is trying to intimidate me with frivolous court cases." The mask slipped completely. The subtle real estate legal professional had become simply every other suburban tyrant, having a nuclear meltdown due to the fact someone dared combat lower back. Her dinner guests abruptly remembered pressing appointments. Awesome how speedy rich people can evacuate while a person begins screaming about rednecks at a catered celebration. However, Vivan wasn't done. The subsequent morning, I discovered a nameless word under my windshield wiper: "Stop fishing or face the consequences." Apparently, public humiliation simply made her extra risky. Anonymous threats are lovely, but what vided next became straight-up authorities' weaponization. There is not anything pretty like looking a actual property lawyer became federal groups into her non-public attack dogs. Inside every week of my countersuit, I had extra government inspectors crawling over my property than a meth lab bust. Fish and flora and fauna confirmed up first, clipboards in hand, claiming they needed to analyze ability disruption to migratory chook patterns due to my fishing sports. I'm not making this up. This girl certainly satisfied a federal enterprise that me catching base was what may screwing with duck GPS systems. The EPA inspector arrived subsequent, acceptable up like he changed into entering Chernobyl, armed with water trying out kits and a clipboard thicker than Vivian's criminal payments. Apparently, my non-public lake utilization is probably creating environmental dangers. The sweet irony of that accusation could hit me like a freight educate later. County Fitness Branch Thursday morning, Code Enforcement Friday afternoon. Via week stop, I had more regulatory commercial enterprise cards than a Washington lobbyist. Each inspector found exactly what you'll anticipate from the cleanest lake in 3 counties. Genuinely nothing wrong. But bureaucratic harassment is a two-way avenue, and I was about to discover ways to drive it. Even as Vivan was gambling puppet grasp with government groups, I used to be making pals with the puppets. Seems when you're well-mannered to overworked civil servants compelled to analyze obviously complaints, they don't forget you. Additionally, they don't forget who is wasting their time. Dolores Martinez became my mystery weapon, 68-year vintage retired county clerk with a memory like a metal lure and a grudge against corrupt builders over espresso that tasted like justice and caffeine. She dropped a bombshell that made my head spin. Marcus, that whole subdivision become constructed on included wetlands. Developer were given his allows by promising to keep all natural water functions all the time. It is federal law. The espresso cup felt warm in my fingers as the implications sank in. Knowledge nugget. Development permits frequently incorporate perpetual upkeep clauses that legally bind all future property owners. Violating these environmental regulations can cause large federal consequences. I spent the next weekend playing environmental detective, and what I discovered was better than winning the lottery. Vivan's landscaping contractor, the equal diesel belching group that have been serenading my fishing journeys, changed into the use of my lake as their private rubbish unload. Grass clippings, hedge trimmings, fertilizer-soaked debris, it all flowing at once into federally blanketed wetlands. Each Saturday morning at dawn, like clockwork, I became an environmental paparazzi, hiding within the tree line with my digital camera while the candy scent of honeysuckle combined with diesel exhaust. The difficult bark of very well trees pressed against my back as I waited for the suitable shot. 3rd Saturday in a row, I stuck them dumping natural waste instantly into my water, the splash echoing across the still morning air. The pics had been fantastic, time-stamped, DP slow, high-resolution proof of federal crimes happening in broad daytime. However, the actual jackpot came after I ran their license through the Kingdom database. Pristine Landscaping LLC became 40% owned by Richard Blackwater, Vivan's husband, actual estate developer, and apparently Elementime environmental crook. Well, the EPA does not just love environmental violations with photo proof. They without a doubt worship them when they are related to harassment campaigns. I filed my complaint Monday morning with a grin that could have powered half of the county. Via Wednesday, pristine landscaping turned into under federal investigation. Richard misplaced 3 county contracts with the aid of Friday. Turns out whilst you're dumping natural waste in included wetlands, municipalities suddenly do not want you maintaining their public parks. Who should have visible that coming? The sound of Vivan's perfectly controlled international starting to crack became sweeter than church bells on Sunday morning. However, if idea environmental violations would humble her, I used to be approximately to examine just how spectacularly wrong one individual can be. Nothing makes a determined female extra dangerous than watching her husband's enterprise empire collapse because of her personal vendetta. And Vivian Blackwater changed into about to prove she'd alternatively burn down the neighborhood than surrender. The morning I found the Algae Facet Organization's enterprise card tucked beneath my windshield wiper, I knew we'd crossed the line from legal battle into something a whole lot darker. The card smelled faintly of chlorine and desperation. Environmental terrorism was seemingly Vaughn's next play. Too terrible she failed to realize she became about to poison her own drinking water. That business card below my windshield wasn't only a danger. It turned into a confession waiting to occur. However, I had no concept Vivon was approximately to dedicate the sort of environmental crime that could make hardened EPA retailers weep. Even as I was out of town traveling Sandra's sister in Charlotte, Vivan became busy studying algae management solutions. Like she became making ready for environmental struggle. She observed Clearwater Solutions, a commercial algae side business enterprise that makes a specialty of commercial energy pond remedies. The type of chemical substances that could sterilize a lake quicker than you can say assets values. Here's where Vivian's lawyer mind genuinely shined. Moody, sweet. She referred to as clean water and lied via her perfectly veneered enamel, claiming my lake turned into community assets, experiencing a risky algae bloom that threatened public health. $3,500 in cash paid up the front for a midnight chemical attack on what she advised them become an emergency environmental situation. The irony might have been hilarious if it wasn't about to homicide everything I loved. I came home Sunday nighttime to the odor hitting me earlier than I even stepped out of my truck. Sharp steel stench of copper sulfate mixed with mass death, the lake water had turned an unnatural blue-green color like Antares mixed. Massive Bertha turned into floating 20 toes from the dock, her large body already bloated within the contaminated water. 3 years of morning feedings, looking her grow from decent-sized base right into a lake legend, and now she became simply every other casualty in Vivon's suburban genocide. Whoa. 200 other fish floated alongside her bluegill. Crappy catfish. And entire surroundings assassinated overnight due to the fact one female could not stand looking someone enjoy their very own damn belongings. My hand shook as I fumbled for my cell phone. The smooth plastic slippery with sweat and natural rage. The County Environmental Emergency Hotline linked me to Officer Jim Patterson, who'd been investigating illegal dumping for 15 years. When I defined the aquatic crime scene, his voice shifted from routine bureaucrat to Defcon 1. Do not contact something, hold pets away, and do not disturb the proof. I'm bringing the hazmat crew. Patterson arrived with a water evaluation system that appeared like it belonged on Mars. To take a look at strips turned hues that do not exist in nature. Deep blues and purples screaming big chemical infection. The acrid scent of testing chemicals mixed with lake dyeing made my eyes water. Commercial energy copper sulfate poisoning, he said, his voice tight with expert fury. Whoever did this didn't simply kill your fish. They sterilized the complete ecosystem for 2 to a few years minimum. This is criminal destruction of property, probable federal environmental terrorism. Understanding nugget. Unlawful dumping of commercial chemical substances on private property constitutes prison destruction in maximum states and triggers federal environmental crime costs wearing 5 to 10-year jail sentences. However, Patterson wasn't carried out gambling detective. Whilst I stood there preserving a rubbish bag that was once my fishing paradise, he became reviewing protection footage from Mrs. Henderson's doorbell digital camera across the road. The video became crystal clean. Clearwater Solutions truck arriving at 2:17 a.m. 2 figures in shielding fits dumping death immediately into my lake, vanishing by way of 2:43 a.m. 26 mins to destroy 70 years of family heritage. That nighttime, I sat on my dock keeping one of the smaller lifeless bass, remembering my grandfather teaching me to cast on this specific spot. The timber planks felt cold and splintered below my legs, and the silence changed into virtually deafening. No birds, no bugs, no life round water that used to bubble with hobby. Sandra observed me there an hour later, each people crying as we started the nightmare cleanup of environmental terrorism. Ew. But grief sharpens cognizance like not anything else. As we stuffed rubbish bag after garbage bag with Vivon's sufferers, my electrician mind started out connecting dots. I might hooked up solar panels on dozens of houses in this subdivision. I knew their application structures in detail. Every residence in Willow Creek Estates makes use of well water pumped from the equal underground spring machine that feeds my lake. The identical aquifer, the equal water source, the identical copper sulfate contamination now flowing through limestone channels closer to 847 unsusmund. I had my water tested the next morning by an impartial lab. The consequences made my blood run bloodless. Copper sulfate ranges 4 times higher than EPA safe-consuming water standards. Vivian hadn't simply poisoned my lake. She'd infected her entire community's water delivery. Each tap, every bathe, each iced ice maker in that pristine subdivision was now serving up industrial toxins. The woman who spent months bitching approximately my unpleasant fishing activities had simply became her best network into a poisonous waste website. And she or he become approximately to drink her own poison. Candy, sweet karma, in no way tasted so metal. You understand that second whilst you're learning one factor and by chance discover nuclear codes hidden to your grandmother's recipe field. This is basically what befell once I determined to dig deeper into my grandfather's property records. I was building a more potent felony protection in opposition to Vivon's lawsuit. What I found is a substitute changed into the equivalent of proudly owning the most effective water nicely in a barren region, complete of thirsty human beings. Monday morning, I drove return to the county courthouse basement. That unique kind of authority's purgatory that smells like old paper, dust mites, and beaten desires. Fluorescent lighting buzzed overhead like irritated wasps while I dug through report boxes that hadn't been touched, considering the fact that people idea would stop civilization. The unique deed transfer from 1952 was buried below a long time of beside the point office work. My palms have been black with archival dust when I eventually discovered it, written in that formal prison language designed to make normal human beings nod off. Then I hit the paragraph that made my heart forestall, which include all water rights, floor and subsurface to underground spring machine and tributaries thereto in perpetuity. In perpetuity, Latin for forever and ever. Suck it. My grandfather hadn't simply offered land. He'd bought every drop of water flowing through the underground spring device extending for miles underneath what could, in the end, come to be Vaughn's precious subdivision. I sat there in that dusty basement, arms trembling, protecting a 12 months old report that just made me the maximum powerful person in 3 counties. The paper felt skinny and fragile, but the words on it were stronger than titanium. Right here's wherein it gets genuinely scrumptious. I pulled the Willow Creek Estates development data from 2008. The developer water utilization permit utility claimed they'd be drilling impartial wells with sustainable water sources. Unbiased wells that tap immediately into my grandfather's spring device 400 FT downstream from my lake. Each unmarried one among them. The developer never bought water rights due to the fact he probably did not even understand they existed as a separate asset. Majority don't. They think owning land method proudly owning anything waters below it. Wrong. High-priced assumption. Career-ending mistake. Knowledge nugget. Water rights are absolutely become independent from land possession and must be explicitly transferred. Failure to adhere these rights can reveal builders and owners to big criminal liability and usage charges. For 15 years, 847 families were using my water without permission, without reimbursement, and without even knowing their maximum hated neighbor actually owned every drop flowing from their faucets. The maths by myself made my head spin. Average family water usage instances 847 homes, instances 15 years, instances market fee for water rights. We are speak me tens of thousands and thousands of dollars in back bills I may want to legally call for. However, the contamination perspective that become the diamond sitting on pinnacle of this legal gold mine. Each domestic in that subdivision was now consuming water poisoned by means of Vivens middle-of-the-night chemical battle. Copper sulfate symptoms encompass belly pain, nausea, liver damage, and in youngsters, developmental problems. The EPA treats this as a public fitness emergency worth of federal intervention. Vivian's lawsuit towards me for 6 of dock area unexpectedly gave the impression of a little one threatening Mike Tyson. I known as Tom Martinez from the parking zone, sunshine warming the truck's interior whilst my international tilted on its axis. Tom, I don't just personal the lake. I very own their complete water deliver. Every drop they have got used for 15 years is legally mine. The silence stretched goodbye. I checked if my telephone had died. Marcus, he finally whispered, you're no longer protecting towards a assets dispute anymore. You're sitting on the most important water rights case this kingdom has ever seen. And if that contamination spreads through the aquifer, he didn't finish. We both knew Vivan had poisoned 847 houses, the use of water that belonged to me. The electricity dynamic just shifted so difficult I should experience the earth circulate underneath Vivan's dressmaker. When you discover you're sitting on a prison nuclear weapon, you do not simply start swinging it around like a under the influence of alcohol man at a bar combat. You collect a group of extraordinarily educated assassins who recognize precisely where to goal. First call went to Rebecca Torres, environmental legal professional out of Raleigh, who'd built her profession destroying corporations that thought poisoning communities was simply proper commercial enterprise. Her workplace smelled like luxurious coffee and vendetta after I walked in Tuesday morning. Water rights violation, environmental infection, public health emergency, she stated, eyes glowing as she reviewed my files. Marcus, this is not a lawsuit. That is a master magnificence in felony war that'll gain knowledge of and regulation faculties for decades. Rebecca's approach becomes stunning. Hit them from each route concurrently earlier than they even recognize they may be below assault. Federal lawsuit for water rights robbery, EPA emergency intervention for contamination, country crook expenses for illegal dumping, civil suits for belongings damage, emotional distress and punitive damages that could make a lottery winner blush, felony tactic, overwhelming fighters with simultaneous prison actions from a couple of jurisdictions forces on the spot defensive positions. They'll be too busy putting out fires to mount any coordinated counterattack. Twitter recruit became Dr. James Mitchell, hydrogeologist from North Carolina Kingdom, who makes opposing attorneys weep during depositions. We met at my Poison Lake Wednesday morning, in which he spent 4 hours taking samples and mapping the underground spring machine with gadget that probably fee extra than my truck. Charming aquifer shape, he said, need an infected water that also rire of chemicals. His arms moved precisely through checking out procedures, whilst dragonflies that used to swarm here were considerably absent. Unmarried supply spring feeding directly into residential wells. Contamination will reach every home within 6 to 8 weeks. We're searching in 800 to A0 affected houses. The scientific hammer that would weigh down any doubt about Vivon's guilt. 3-team member becomes Sarah Morgan, investigative journalist who'd spent 3 years taking down corrupt HOA like she become amassing scalps. Her exposes had destroyed HOA presidents for embezzlement and one that changed into literally jogging a protection racket. When she noticed my proof, she gave the impression of a child on Christmas morning. That is Pulitzer degree material, she said, spreading documents across my kitchen table with reverent pleasure. Electricity-drunk HOA tyrant poisons entire community whilst terrorizing the man who legally owns their water supply. CNN will combat MSNBC for first interview rights. Sarah's historical past test on Viven's study like a serial killer's resume. 3 previous neighborhoods, 4 harassment lawsuits, 2 restraining orders for stalking behavior. The woman had a documented 20-year pattern of destroying all of us who dared venture her authority. Dolores Martinez furnished the historic ammunition. Over dinner coffee that tasted like justice and bottomless refills. She showed me permit applications proving the authentic developer had committed outright fraud claiming water rights he by no means purchased, by no means owned, in no way even validated existed. Oh. Each homeowner offered property underneath fake pretenses, Dolores explained. Her weathered fingers tapping yellow documents. They suppose they own water get right of entry to. Legally, they have been stealing from you for 15 years. Rebecca crunched numbers with calculator precision. Marketplace fee for water rights in our county, $50 per family monthly. Instances 847 houses. Instances 180 months, $30, 6 cents million in lower back bills I could legally demand. This is earlier than calculating punitive damages for the contamination. Economic method. In water rights instances, calculate both direct utilization fees and consequential damages from environmental infection. Combined liability regularly forces settlements earlier than combatants can mount defenses. But right here is wherein I made the selection that separated justice from revenge. I wasn't going to financially destroy 800 innocent households simply to punish one psychotic female. We offer agreement, Rebecca proposed. Waive all returned bills for 3 matters. Entire lake restoration, Vivian's resignation, plus crook prosecution and permanent oversight preventing destiny abuse. Dr. Mitchell designed the healing plan right there. The use of natural bioremediation, local fish restocking, aquatic plant restoration. Price $250,000 paid mutually by Tijabale. Sarah coordinated media timing, simultaneous story release with prison filing for max public pressure. She'd already pitched NPR, Washington Submit environmental desk, and 3 cable networks salivating over the HOA Karen Poison's neighborhood water supply attitude. The plan was elegant. Hit Viven with federal expenses, country charges, civil legal responsibility, and national media exposure concurrently. Provide the innocent homeowners a route ahead that did not bankrupt them. Pressure accountability without collective punishment. We had proof that would convict. We had professional testimony that couldn't be challenged. We had media equipped to show Viven right into a countrywide symbol of HRNE. And we had ethical excessive floor that might play superbly in court docket and public opinion. Now, we just wish the proper level for Viven's very public downfall. You understand what is stunning approximately looking a person's international fall apart? The instant they understand their cover-up is actually making the whole thing worse, but they may be too deep to stop digging. Viven located the water infection exactly the way Karma supposed. Through her associates' lawsuits approximately the metal flavor of their morning coffee. Inside every week of poisoning my lake, the Willow Creek Estates Facebook organization exploded with posts about bizarre-tasting water and odds sent from the faucets. Parents complained their children have been getting belly aches. One lady published about her dog refusing to drink from its bowl. The comment segment became a digital panic room. Viven being Viven at once went into harm manipulate mode that would make a politician proud. She published an legit HOA assertion claiming the flavor became herbal mineral deposits and seasonal modifications in groundwater composition. Translation: not anything to see right here. Prevent asking questions. Accept as true with your benevolent dictator. However desperate people do desperate matters. And Vivian was approximately to show just how some distance she'd go to disguise her environmental terrorism. She contacted the Algicide organization, Clearwater Answers, and tried to bribe the proprietor into destroying their provider information. Provided him $10,000 cash to lose any documentation in their middle-of-the-night lake remedy. The scent of her desperation could have cleared a room. What Viven failed to know turned into that environmental services groups keep meticulous statistics, mainly due to legal liability. And the owner, a guy named Derek Thompson, recorded their whole communique because something approximately a frantic girl offering Coins bribes at 11 p.m. made his attorney's senses tingle. Criminal warning. Attempting to ruin evidence or bribe witnesses transforms misdemeanor prices into felony obstruction of justice. The cover-up is regularly worse than the crime. While Vivan changed into busy trying to erase evidence, she additionally employed a personal investigator to dig up dirt on me. A few guy named Rick Patterson, who specialized in private background investigations and looked like he discovered his alternate from terrible television shows. Rick started out following me around city, photographing my truck, speak me to my clients, attempting to find something that could discredit me in court docket. He even tried to interrupt into my truck one afternoon on the hardware keep. I watched from inside the store as he attempted the door handles, his reasonably priced matched jacket stretching across his returned. I known as the police and had him arrested for tried vehicle burglary. Seems Rick had a history of overstepping prison barriers for clients. His PI license changed into already on probation, but Vivan wasn't completed. She filed nameless lawsuits with the state contractor licensing board claiming my solar panel business became working without right permits. Complete fabrication. However, it caused in research that value me 2 weeks and $3,000 in felony prices to solve. The bureaucratic harassment become returned with a vengeance. Besides this time, I was documenting everything. Each phone name, each complaint, each example of her throwing government organizations at me like guns. Surveillance tip. In harassment instances, usually take a look at your nation's recording laws. North Carolina is a 1P party consent country, which means I could legally report every communication without informing the alternative birthday party. Meanwhile, the network fitness crisis changed into getting worse. A pediatrician on the town observed a spike in adolescents' belly problems among children from Willow Creek Estates. Parents were bringing children in with signs and symptoms constant with heavy metal poisoning, nausea, stomach ache, complications. The HOA board started out receiving dozens of lawsuits approximately water best. Human beings have been shopping for bottled water in bulk. Some households established steeply priced filtration systems. The Facebook group became a support organization for humans convinced something turned into critically wrong with their water. Deliver. Vivian's response, blame aging infrastructure and announce a special assessment of $500 in keeping with family for emergency water system upgrades. She was actually charging humans to restoration the hassle she'd created. The board meeting in which she announced this was incredible. So, 80 irritated owners packed into the community middle, the air thick with tension and the scent of burnt espresso from the ancient network espresso maker. Dad and Mom stood up disturbing solutions, displaying scientific bills, threatening complaints. Vivan stood on the podium in her designer match, makeup perfect, voice regular, as she lied through her tooth approximately mineral deposits and infrastructure failures. The female should have taught grasp lessons in gaslighting. 3 board participants faced her after the meeting, demanding to recognize approximately the mysterious $3,500 landscaping price from the HOA budget last month. Vivan refused to offer receipts, claimed it was recurring upkeep, and threatened to sue any board member who questioned her financial selections. It truly is when board member Patricia Morgan, no relation to Sarah, commenced doing her own research into HOA price range. Seems the usage of community budget to poison a neighbor's property counts as embezzlement under North Carolina regulation. The walls have been remaining in on Vivan from each route. Her cowl-up turned into developing new crimes quicker than she could cover the antique ones. And she nonetheless had no idea that I owned the water supply. She just contaminated. I obtained one very last threatening telephone name that week. Drop the lawsuit or you'll regret it. The voice became disguised, but the desperation beneath became unmistakable. My response changed into simple. I will see you in court. Whilst a cornered animal realizes the lure is last, it both surrenders or goes in reality feral. Vivian Blackwater chose Frau. Her final gambit commenced with a neighborhood-wide defamation marketing campaign that would make a propaganda minister jealous. She created 3 fake accounts entire with stock pics and faux histories and flooded the Willow Creek Estates institution with posts about my unlawful sports. In line with Viven's virtual puppets, I used to be an environmental terrorist who intentionally contaminated my personal lake to border the HOA and extort cash from innocent families. The put-up claimed I used to be walking some kind of insurance fraud scheme, that my solar commercial enterprise became the front for unlawful operations, that I had a criminal history. Natural fiction, however posted with sufficient self-assurance that people commenced believing it. Defamation regulation. Creating fake debts to spread fake statements causing reputational or monetary damage constitutes irritated defamation and can trigger separate civil and criminal charges. The smear marketing campaign labored on some human beings. I started out getting antagonistic stares on the grocery keep. Soon installation clients canceled contracts mentioning concerns about our commercial enterprise practices. Someone spray painted L on my truck in the Walmart parking zone. The reasonably priced paint odor lingered for days even after I cleaned it off. But Vivon's desperation turned into approximately to guide her into honestly silly territory. She showed up at my house on a Thursday nighttime, dressed in informal clothes as opposed to her standard Powers match, wearing a leather briefcase that likely costs extra than the majority's monthly mortgage. The sunset forged long shadows throughout my driveway as she walked up, her heels clicking on the concrete. Marcus, I assume we will resolve this like reasonable adults, she stated, placing the briefcase on my porch railing. The leather creaked as she opened it, revealing neat stacks of $100 payments, $100 cash to drop all prison action and signal a mutual, non-disclosure settlement. The evening air smelled like honeysuckle and bribery. What Vivan failed to know became that I used to be carrying a cord. Tom Martinez had recommended it after her pie were given arrested, and I'd gotten very at ease with the little recording tool taped to my chest. North Carolina's one celebration consent regulation is a beautiful thing. You are offering me money to cover up the truth which you poisoned my lake and contaminated your neighborhood's water deliver? Making sure the wire caught each word crystal clean. I'm providing you an affordable settlement to solve a property dispute, she said. Legal professionals speak dripping like venom. This is a great faith gesture to avoid protracted litigation. True religion gesture, I repeated. Is that what we are calling attempted bribery now? Her face went from faux friendly to ice cold in approximately 2 seconds. She snapped the briefcase shut, the sound sharp as a gunshot inside the quiet nighttime. You are going to remorse this, Marcus. I have connections in this county to be able to break you. I'll take my probabilities, I stated. Now get off my belongings before I add trespassing to the listing of fees. She left tire marks in my gravel driveway, her Lexus spitting stones as she peeled out. Meanwhile, the environmental health emergency became achieving essential mass. The county health department had received over 50 lawsuits about subdivision water fine. Mother and father had been documenting their kids' signs, nausea, stomachache, persistent headaches, even some instances of pores and skin rashes from bathing in infected water. The EPA determined to research after a county fitness officer submitted an legit issue record. While federal environmental groups get worried, things escalate speedy. They don't take kindly to contaminated ingesting water, affecting loads of families. EPA investigators arrived at Willow Creek Estates on a Tuesday morning with water checking out device that made Dr. Mitchell's setup appear like a high-faculty technological know-how challenge. They examined wells at some point of the subdivision, mapped the aquifer system, and traced contamination resources with the methodical precision of crime scene investigators. Their preliminary findings showed what Dr. Mitchell had expected. Neutazole. Copper sulfate contamination was spreading through the complete underground spring device. Modern-day levels in subdivision wells had been drawing near EPA emergency thresholds. Inside another month, the water might be officially dangerous for human consumption. The EPA issued a public fitness advisory recommending Willow Creek residents avoid consuming faucet water until further note. Property values began dropping at once. Not anything kills actual property costs faster than federal warnings approximately poisoned water components. Vivian's psychological breakdown was becoming seen to everybody. She became noticed at the grocery keep having a screaming healthy with herself in the parking lot. Her husband Richard moved out, taking their 2 kids and submitting for separation, mentioning irreconcilable variations in capacity prison liability exposure. The HOA board sooner or later voted to eliminate her as president after discovering she'd used community price range to pay for the algae aspect, the pie, and a couple of different personal vendetta charges. Embezzlement prices had been filed with the county prosecutor. Her lawyer resigned, bringing up ethical issues approximately representing someone actively committing crimes even as under criminal scrutiny. Everything Vivian had constructed, her social standing, her marriage, her function of electricity become collapsing like a residence of playing cards in a hurricane. And here she still did not recognize the worst part. She'd poisoned a water supply that legally belonged to the person she'd been seeking to damage. The very last war of words changed into inevitable, and it became going to be very public. The Peneirage Network Center hadn't seen a crowd like this because the county tried elevating belongings taxes. Standing room best, 300 people stuffed into space for 200. The air was thick with frame warmness, fearful strength, and burnt institutional espresso. Television Information Group installation cameras in lower back. County sheriff located deputies close to exits. EPA representatives sat front row with professional badges and grim expressions. Vivian sat on degree with remaining HOA board members, fashion designer suit ideal, makeup faultless, however. Her eyes had that cornered animal look. She kept checking her phone, possibly praying for a miracle. I sat third row with my group, Rebecca Torres, Dr. Mitchell, Tom Martinez, Sarah Morgan. We had documents that might trade everything. But first, we might let Vivian dig deeper. Patricia Morgan, the brand new board president, known as the Meeting to Reserve. We are right here to deal with water excellent concerns and discuss EPA findings. Crowd erupted. Mother and father shouted about ill kids. A person yelled about belongings values, losing $40 in 2 weeks. Demands for refunds, answers duty. Patricia raised her fingers for quiet. The EPA will gift their findings first. Dr. Sandra Murphy from the EPA didn't sugarcoat it. She displayed water, trying out results on the projector, vibrant crimson numbers showing copper sulfate stages 4 times above safe standards. Standards are noted from business algae facet dumping here, she stated, laser pointer highlight. Chemical compounds entered groundwater and spread all through the spring, feeding your wells. Vivian squirmed like she became sitting on hot coals. Who dumped the chemicals? Who dumped the chemicals? Someone shouted. Dr. Murphy regarded directly at Vivian. It's a matter for ongoing crook investigation. 300 heads became to stare at Vivian. The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Patricia cleared her throat. Marcus read his facts about assets, rights, and water get admission to. I walked to the microphone, each eye accompanied. Cameras swiveled. Maximum of you understand me as the difficult neighbor who would not forestall fishing. I commenced. Vivian Blackwater spent months looking to pressure me off my belongings via court cases, harassment, and sooner or later, environmental terrorism. Vivian shot up. That is slander. By no means sit down, Mrs. Blackwater. The sheriff's deputy ordered. Not asked, ordered. I held up my grandfather's 1952 deed. This record includes one precise paragraph I want to read. All water rights, surface and subsurface to underground spring device and tributaries thereto in perpetuity. Silence except for the projector hum. In undeniable English, I personal the water rights to the complete aquifer feeding this subdivision. Each drop out of your taps for 15 years legally belongs to me. The developer by no means bought these rights. He just drilled into my water without permission. Pressured shouting erupted. Anger, surprise, fear blending inside the crowd. I held up my hand. I'm now not here to bankrupt every person. I'm waiving all returned bills about $30 million you might not owe me. Remedy washed over faces. However, Vivian Blackwater poisoned my lake with business chemical compounds, destroying 70 years of family historical past and contaminating water that belongs to me. Then she covered it up while your kids got sick, Rebecca stood. Mrs. Blackwater faces federal environmental destruction fees, kingdom unlawful dumping and embezzlement costs, and civil assets harm costs. We video proof, recorded bribery tries, and documentation of her the use of HOA budget for private vendettas. The deputy walked closer to the level. Vivan went ghost white. That is a setup. He infected his very own lake to border me. Ma'am, I have an arrest warrant for environmental crimes and obstruction of justice. The room exploded as the deputy handcuffed her. You will all remorse this, she shrieked. I will sue everyone and every of you. That redneck is manipulating you. Final masks gone. Pure rage and classism on display for 300 witnesses and 3 cameras. As she changed into escorted out, I again to the microphone. I am proposing an agreement protective everybody here, complete environmental restoration funded via insurance and Mrs. Blackwater's restitution, no again payments for water utilization, and independent oversight to save you future abuse. The group's anger shifted to careful wish. Patricia stood. The board unanimously supports this proposal. Dr. Mitchell supplied the restoration timeline 18 months to smooth water, atmosphere recuperation, ordinary protection testing. Sarah Morgan's article would put up inside the hour. HOA president poisons whole neighborhood's water supply and belongings vendetta. Human beings filed out, a few preventing to shake my hand, others processing the whole thing. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It became approximately accountability, network healing, and making sure no person else might go through below petty tyrants. Vivian Blackwater spent months trying to drive me off my land. Alternatively, she drove herself straight right into a federal jail cell. 6 months after Vivon's arrest, I stood on my dock at dawn, looking native base fingerlings get released into the lake, water crystal clean again. That easy minerals scent replacing the chemical stench that had haunted this region. Dr. Mitchell's recovery plan worked higher than predicted. Haha, predicted. Herbal bio, remediation, strategic water biking, and local plant healing added the lake lower back to lifestyles faster than expected. Monthly EPA checks showed infection degrees losing to 0. Massive Bertha's descendants had been thriving. The grandfather's lake environmental belief became something larger than I imagined. Agreement funds, $250,000 from Vivian's property and the HOA insurance, created an environmental education software. Local colleges deliver youngsters out twice monthly to learn about aquatic ecosystems, water conservation, and protective herbal assets. Seems poisoning a lake can cause something beautiful in case you're inclined to turn tragedy into training. Vine's legal aftermath turned into precisely what she deserved. Federal environmental destruction, state illegal dumping, embezzlement, obstruction of justice. She pleaded guilty to the whole thing. 3 years federal jail, 5 years probation, $75,000 in restitution, 200 hours cleaning waterways after release. Her husband divorced her. Actual estate law license permanently revoked. She misplaced everything looking to ruin one guy who just wanted to fish in peace. Willow Creek Estates underwent its own transformation. New HOA board carried out transparency regulations requiring property owner vote approval for financial decisions. They hooked up resident rights safety committees and replaced Vivan's dictatorship with actual democratic governance. The twist no one saw coming. I opened my lake for community fishing. Every Saturday morning, households from the subdivision fish underneath proper environmental control. Kids who'd never held fishing rods learned to forage from the same dock where my grandfather taught me. The once-a-year spring pageant have become neighborhood traditions celebrating restored ecosystem, community cooperation, and the concept that now and again the nice revenge is being better than your enemy. This year's festival drew 500 people, precedes investment neighborhood water conservation. Sandra and that I, nonetheless, sit down on that old dock most evenings looking base jump at sundown. The timber plank sense heat and easy, worn with the aid of time and infinite fishermen. Children's laughter from the fishing program mixes with chicken tune and mild splashing. This location feels alive again. Our legal case set precedent. 3 other North Carolina water rights cases cited our agreement as a version for balancing man or woman assets rights with network desires. Environmental regulation college students look at how we used leverage for recuperation in place of destruction. HOA reform legislation surpassed the nation's Senate remaining month, inspired by means of Vuvon's abuse. New laws require monetary transparency, restrict HOA authority over pre-present residences, and establish consequences for harassment and electricity abuse. One lady's tyranny brought about systemic alternate protecting thousands of Destiny owners. My solar commercial enterprise improved into environmental recuperation initiatives. Preventing an HOA tyrant and winning makes high-quality advertising and marketing. I have consulted with dozens of property proprietors facing comparable harassment, supporting them apprehend rights and fight back correctly. Sarah Morgan's article on Fold National spawned a podcast series and stimulated proposed federal law addressing HOA duty, duty. One lake, one stand against tyranny, countrywide impact. Right, here's what I found out. Never allow petty tyrants make you abandon standards. Document the entirety. Recognize your rights. Occasionally, the fine manner to defeat enemies is not destruction. It's constructing something higher from their errors. Your turn. Have you handled HOA nightmares or assets rights violations? Percentage your tale inside the feedback. Your enjoy would possibly help a person else facing similar battles. Real experiences create real trade. If this tale of standing up to petty tyrants and protecting our environment stimulated you, hit that subscribe button and switch on notifications. Next week, the city councilman who attempted stealing a veteran's land via eminent domain abuse till the veteran observed the councilman's own property violations. That karma was even sweeter. Don't forget, whether you are in North Carolina, Texas, California, or everywhere else managing energy, hungry HOA, you are now not alone. Groups are stronger than tyrants. Truth is greater effective than corruption. And sometimes one character status up for what's right changes the whole lot. Thank you for watching. Now get accessible and shield what is yours.